So it's taken us many lifetimes and much hard work to be able to create the karma to have the rebirth that we have right now. And although we feel very real, very solid, I am here, in actual fact, this life is very tenuous. Depends on causes and conditions. Some are physical, some mental, some karmic. And when any of those causes and conditions change radically, or sometimes even just a little bit, then this life ends and our consciousness goes on to another life, influenced by our karma, our actions, what we've said and done and thought in this life and in previous lives. So if we really believe this kind of worldview, then in this life, while we have the opportunity, we're going to do strong purification. We're going to collect merit. We're going to restrain our senses. And also plant lots of seeds of the Dharma in our mind stream. And try and understand the Dharma teachings as best as we can. And put them into practice. So let's have a strong determination to do this. And especially extend our heart outwards to each and every living being. Seeing that what we do has the potential to influence all these living beings. And so with the intention to influence them in a virtuous way, in a way such that they will progress on the path to liberation, then let's really try and do our best to act for their benefit. Holding in mind our long-term goal of full awakening. And so our sharing the Dharma this evening is another little drop in the bucket of the collection of merit. But it can also be a quite significant step on the path too, depending how we listen, how we understand. So let's do our best to pay attention and think about the teachings. So, many greetings to all the people online who I haven't seen in a few weeks. I'm showing my face tonight, and then for the next few weeks I'll be gone again. But I think you're in good hands with Venerable Sepa, and what to do. So we were talking about external matter and internal matter. the difference being whether it was conjoined with consciousness or not conjoined with consciousness. And when talking about the internal matter, there's some of it that is gross, like he was, like just our whole body, basically, including the color of our eyes and these kinds of things. And then the subtle internal matter that is, that forms the sense faculties. Okay? So within, we have 5 of these that are physical. So within the gross eyeball, then there's the subtle eye faculty or eye sense power, and that's what helps to connect the object with the consciousness. And so similarly in the ear, so that would probably be the rods and cones on the retinue. Some people hypothesize in our ear, the hammer and stirrup, is it? In our nose, whatever it is, on our tongue, subtle taste buds, and then the physical sense power, or bodily or tactile sense power. They say that's the skin, so that would be the nerve endings in the skin. And as we were talking last time, not all of our body has nerve endings whereby we feel pain or pleasure or any kind of sense things. There's certain areas where it's just, there's no sensation. And it brings up this interesting question. For example, our blood or our lymph, there's no nerve endings there. You don't feel anything. Your blood doesn't hurt. It boils sometimes, but it doesn't hurt. And your blood doesn't feel pleasure. Okay. And yet it's considered part of the body, isn't it? So it's interesting when you start to look at it in more detail. Anyway, we're at the part now where the definition of the eye sense power. Okay? So it says, a clear internal form that is the uncommon empowering condition for its own effect and eye consciousness. Okay, so I think we may have covered this before, but when we have a sense perception with the 5 senses, there's, and also with the mental sense, there's 3 conditions. You have the object, you have the uncommon empowering condition, and you have the preceding moment of consciousness. Okay, so here, this one is the uncommon empowering condition, meaning that it serves to bring the visual consciousness, and in a special way, like no other empowering condition can cause a visual consciousness. And this this sense faculty really can't cause any other kind of consciousness but the visual one. Okay, so an illustration of an eye sense power. So eye sense power and eye sense faculty, it's the same meaning. Okay, so an illustration is the clear internal form having the shape like a zamar flower. So I guess zamar flowers, maybe they look like rods and cones, I'm not so sure. Okay, so this form, which is located within the orb of the eye, is in the continuum of a person. A sense power is a clear internal form because it is matter within the physical body of a person that cannot be perceived by any sense consciousness. Okay, so it's matter, but it can't be perceived by a sense consciousness. So it's form, but it isn't an object of the, it itself is not the object of a visual consciousness. So that's quite interesting. That only leaves it to be apprehended by the mental consciousness. So I wonder how the mental consciousness apprehends that. If you need some kind of super knowledge, when they talk about the super knowledges, they don't talk about them as apprehending these internal sense faculties. Yeah. So, and we can add that to the question list. Yeah. It's matter, but it's not apprehended by a sense consciousness. How is it apprehended? Anyway. Well, that's the super knowledges. The clairvoyance means clear seeing. It means you can see things that other people can't see, but that's only one of the 6 super knowledges. Okay? So we don't, it could be that one, although clairvoyance is usually described as seeing sentient beings dying and being reborn due to their karma. So it would be interesting to find out which of the super knowledges this could be and how that works. Yeah, put that on the question list. The weird questions that Westerners ask, that I'm sure a Tibetan would just accept it, you know. Okay, a sense power is an uncommon empowering condition, which is a type of cause because it alone can give its consciousness power with respect to its field of perception. Thus, it is a necessary but not a sufficient condition for its effect, which is a visual consciousness. So the eye faculty, is necessary to have a visual consciousness, but it's not the only thing that's going to produce a visual consciousness. You need an object and you need a preceding moment of consciousness. So the definitions, divisions, and illustrations for the remaining sense powers are similar to those for the eye sense power. So the definition of an ear sense power, a clear internal form that is the uncommon empowering condition for its own effect and ear consciousness. So, you know, that ear faculty only will produce an auditory consciousness. It won't produce any other kind of consciousness. And the auditory consciousness needs that specific sense faculty to be produced. Okay, an illustration of an ear sense power is a clear internal form having the shape like a cut bundle of wheat. This form being in the continuum of a person. The bundle of wheat is shaped as if it were cut off on one end and has the shafts oriented towards the outside of the ear.
I think it's the little bones. The bones are what make the sound. They vibrate, and then what picks up that vibration, I think, is the part they'd be talking about, which is the cochlea. You have an inner ear.
Yeah.
Half of it is for balance, and the other half is for hearing. I think that's that, and if you were to look at that, it might, especially if you cut it in half, it might look like that. The olfactory one's much more, really close, I think, even closer than this one.
Okay.
No, you can't see it with your eyes, but I think,
if you can't see it with your eyes, how do they know what shape it is?
well, I actually think they must have, I think they looked. I really do, because when you look at the one for the nose, it describes exactly the olfactory nerve that comes down. It sounds just like it.
Yeah.
But according to Professor Bandel, the the internal form. No, yeah, the sense power is form, but it is not shape, and therefore it's color. Yeah, it's color, according to Vasubandhu.
It's color,
Right.
but it
is form and it isn't shape.
It is shape.
It is now Vasubandhu says it is form, but the subtle form, like a sense power, isn't shape. Therefore, it must be color. Because, yeah.
But how can you have color without the shape of the color?
Well, form is divided into the shape and color. There are colors in there, according to.
Yeah, but but to have a color, the color has to be in a certain shape.
To have a color, it doesn't have to be a shape.
Well, it usually is. How can you see color if it's not in a certain shape?
The form has a color. The form has a color. The shape has a color, but it isn't a color.
And anyway, this is. Yeah, this is what Vasubandhu says. We may or may not agree. Modern science may or may not agree. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. An illustration of the nose sense power is a clear internal form having a shape like two copper needles. This form being in the continuum of a person. Okay. Yeah, so it's really hard to know exactly what these are referring to because it really is the nerves. Anyway, we're not going to figure it out. Yeah?
100% certain, obviously, but maybe because when they look at these things, it's no longer they're looking at a person. Because in order to look at the person, you need to kind of mutilate their face and maybe kill them. Does that make sense?
Say that again.
The idea that they are looking at these things, like Venerable Tarpa just brought up, but that they aren't looking at them while the person is still a person because there's no mind there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have. It hasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be that they have this because they did dissection after people died and saw these things and said that must be the sense faculty. I have no idea, and I'm not quite sure it's important for my enlightenment, to tell you the truth. Okay? I'm really not sure about that. Yeah, because our questions about their view of science, never end. Okay, so we did the nose, huh? The definition of a tongue sense power is a clear internal form that is the uncommon empowering condition of its own effect, a tongue consciousness. Learning about these things is important for the purpose of seeing that all of our perceptions are dependent arisings. That's why we're learning about this, is so that we can think of dependent arising. But whether it's correct or not from a scientific view, I don't think really matters, to tell you the truth. This is my opinion. Similarly, with the 8 kind of particles, the four elements and the 4 derivatives, and, whether that is actually accurate according to what science knows, or whether we understand that thing in complete detail, how Vasubandhu looks at it. I think the main purpose of all of that is really to dissect whatever there is into its parts and see that things are empty and yet they exist dependently. So it kind of, in my mind, doesn't matter which model you use as long as you get the right purpose for it. What do you think? Yeah.
In 100 years, there will be all new modern science.
Yeah, that's true. And the whole thing may be described in, again, a totally different way. Yeah. Okay. We did an illustration of a tongue consciousness, of a tongue sense power, is a clear internal form having a shape like a cut half moon, this form being in the continuum of a person. The definition of a body sense power is a clear internal form that is the uncommon empowering condition of its own effect, a body consciousness. Okay, an illustration of a body sense power is a clear internal form having a shape like smooth skin. What shape is smooth skin? This form being in the continuum of a person. Unlike other sense powers, which are located in unique organs like the eyes and ears, the body sense power is all over the body. But like I was just saying, not everywhere. There's parts of our body where it doesn't have this. Okay. When I was sitting in the dentist chair this afternoon, because we're not going into super depth in all of these, but all of these, like they will say there's X number of sensations from your body sense power, smooth and rough and high and low and hunger and thirst and what? Short and long. Yeah. Anyway, all of those kinds of things. And when she was going with the little thing that buzzes, that takes the plaque off of your, not the one that polishes your teeth, but that takes the plaque off. And when she was going along like the gum line there, I was thinking, now what is this sensation? It's not, it's tickling. Or some, how you have that kind of tickling. But that's not rough and smooth and hunger and thirst and long and short and tall and low. And, I was thinking, how would you even describe that? And I was also thinking that sensation is due just to the nerve endings in my mouth. It isn't really telling me the texture or anything about the object that was touching. Yeah, because usually these things are telling you, it informs you of the object. But it's very clear when she's going, that it's, that you're not feeling the sense of the dental instrument. It's very clear that it's a sensation coming because the nerves are getting sparked or whatever, activated. Yeah? So I was thinking, is that a physical sense or not? Huh? Well, it's a physical sense, but it's not of the object that I was touching. Huh? You think? No, there's something touching. Yeah. It's what? No. It's a physical sense. Yeah, your body's feeling it. That we're coming to that. Right now we're just talking to what our body feels. Okay? Yeah. So it was weird. It made me wonder, how many physical sensations are we actually experiencing the quality of the object, and how many physical sensations are because of the nerve endings? Like when we experience pain, we're not sensing an external object. Yeah, pain is coming because of the nerve ending things in part of our body getting activated. Yeah. Don't you think? I mean, if it's an uncomfortable, painful situation, or do you think something is pressing against Yeah, you know more about how the body works. You know, when you have aches and pains and there's nothing touching your body at all.
I was just thinking, this morning when I was cooking, I sliced off a piece of my flesh, and at the initial part of
that
it,
was the special flavor. Okay.
quit.
Yeah. Okay. Go on.
And when it was actually happening, I was aware of the knife
Uh-huh.
doing the cut, so I was aware of both. But then the knife is done, you know, it's finished,
Uh-huh.
but the sensation continues. So it seems like but I think it's hard to capture the first object.
Yeah.
Piece
But
of
it
the
wasn't
object.
like when the knife cut that you felt smooth or cool or whatever quality.
You're right.
Like if you
Yeah,
went
yeah.
like this with your finger with the
Yeah.
knife, you would get a totally different sensation than if the knife cut your finger.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, because of different, receptors. Yeah.
Pain is from free nerve endings, and they're just really the nerve, and they're just like splash, like that, like a nerve, free nerve endings. But all the other ones have little devices on them, so to speak, that get either deformed by my pressure, or, you know, they have little sensing devices on them, you might say, that get deformed by chemicals or pressure, or they're sensitive to different things. And so that's why we have partly why we have different sensations, because the nerves are being stimulated in different ways, I think.
Right. Yeah.
At least from that viewpoint.
Okay. Yeah, but it's interesting to, kind of, I mean, when you're in the dentist chair, you got to think of something that has to do with Dharma. So, we may understand from these explanations of external matter and internal matter that this division is not mutually exclusive. Rather, external matter and internal matter compare as four possibilities. So don't look at the book. What is both external matter and internal matter?
Person's skin?
Your skin. Okay. Yeah, it's external matter for somebody else who sees your skin. And it's internal matter, because you receive the central sensations from it. Okay, what is external matter but not internal matter? Huh? Okay, a fingernail. Hair. Yeah. The carpet. Yeah?
But the hair is also inside, and the fingernail also is inside.
Oh, no, we're talking about the part of the hair and fingernails that are outside, not the hair follicle or the, where the fingernails grow from. Yeah, that part's clearly, inside the body, or internal matter, I should say. What is internal matter but not external matter? Yeah, the eye sense power. What is neither internal matter nor external matter? Consciousness. Okay. Okay, so it's good to do these four. Okay, the 5 internal forms in combination with the 5 external forms are necessary for perception by the 5 sense consciousnesses: eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body consciousnesses. The sense powers and consciousnesses are always cited in the same order. eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body. So when we do the Heart Sutra, you find this is the same order, okay? Some scholars say they are given in this order because that is the order of certifiability or reliability. That is, the eye consciousness is the least reliable and the body consciousness is the most reliable. Yeah. Maybe of being able to ascertain its object correctly. You know, because if we see something very far away, it's very easy for it to appear fuzzy. But if we touch something, we may not be able to say what object it is, but the sensation is, we can feel it clearly. Maybe. Okay, he says, if you are unable to see the form of a person clearly, hearing that person's voice will reliably inform you that there is a person there. Similarly, if you cannot hear the person clearly, seeing them will inform you that they're there. So I'm not sure how about this sentence. Also, often when we cannot see a form clearly, or when it is shaped in an odd or surprising or beautiful way, we naturally seek to verify that shape with our hands because the sense of feel is more reliable. Yeah, do you think that's why people want to touch things in museums? Yeah. Yeah, it gives it, and it gives a different kind of sense data. But I'm sure if you were just feeling it, you would want to look at it too, wouldn't you? You know, and that would give you a whole lot of sense data that just touching it doesn't. Other scholars point out that the given order of the sense powers and consciousnesses merely reflects the physical placement of those senses within the body. Roughly, the eye is above the ear, although I don't know. The ear above the nose, you know. However, the body consciousness is present throughout the body and may not be said to exist predominantly in any one part of the body, as do the other consciousnesses, though it is certainly below the other sense locations. Still, other scholars say that the external forms, the sense powers, and the sense consciousnesses are listed in that order because that sequence reflects the range of perception, visible objects being perceptible from the greatest distance, and tangible objects being perceptible only in direct contact with the body. That makes more sense. We can perceive visual objects as far away as the stars. A sound must be closer, within a few miles or so. Odors must be still closer, and tastes and tangible objects must be in direct contact with the body. Can you taste something that isn't touching your tongue? Yeah? Does it have to actually touch the tongue? Oh, that's still touching your tongue. Something's touching your tongue.
One can taste things that you absorb with your skin, through your skin. I've had this experience actually many times because I used to have my hands on people a lot. Mm-hmm. So
maybe that's that synesthesia.
No, I think it's just absorption.
I don't know.
I think you're just absorbing it through your hands.
But I can taste it.
You can taste it by having your hands on somebody.
If it's something strong, something like tobacco or something like chemotherapy drug, for example, you can.
Can you talk louder? My ear sense organ doesn't have its help today. I forgot to put
I
it
was saying
in.
when you take certain antibiotics, your mouth tastes like metal. And I was thinking there must be something that happens to your saliva, and that's still touching your tongue then. But I don't know how that happens.
Yeah. Anyway, you can think about it next time you go to the doctor and have some test or something. Yeah.
It also just, this order happens to be the way the senses dissolve.
Yes. Yeah. So she said this order also has to be, is the way the senses dissolve at the time of death, that they say that they lose their power. Generally, form or matter is divided into 10 types, 5 types of external matter and the 5 internal sense powers. However, some Buddhists list an 11th type of form, non-revelatory forms, also known as forms for mental consciousness. An example of a non-revelatory form in the system of the Great Exposition School, the point of view of the treasury of knowledge, is a form arising from promises. Such a form is a subtle physical entity created at the moment of first taking a precept, and it remains with the person until the person loses the precept or until death. Okay, so this is one example. We mentioned this a few weeks ago, talking about the forms for mental consciousness, and some, there's a bunch of them, like dream objects and those kinds of things. Yeah, and so one of them, the example that he's giving here, is when we take pratimoksha precepts. Yeah, your ordination is said to by, this is said by the Vaibhasikas and some prasangikas, but it seems maybe not all the prasangikas, that when you at the time of receiving the ordination, you get this very subtle form, this non-revelatory form. And that is what helps to protect you against transgressing the precepts. In the Chinese tradition, they call it the precept body. Okay? And so I've asked a number of geshis about this, and I've never been able to understand it completely. It's made of the 4 elements, but it's not something you can touch. And it's not something you can see. It's a form for mental consciousness, and somehow it arises by the force of your here it says promise, but the force of your determination to keep that precept. And so they say it acts like a dam, in this sense, the way a dam holds back water, that this non-revelatory form holds you back from doing those actions that we've promised not to do. It's called another name instead of non-revelatory is imperceptible. The reason it's called non-revelatory is because it doesn't reveal the intention of the person. Whereas, let's say when you, if you're mad and you hit the table, or you beat the bread, then it reveals something about the mind state. So that's a revelatory form. A non-revelatory form doesn't tell you anything about the mind state. Okay, so it could be called imperceptible or perceptible form as well. It's quite interesting in the Chinese Vinaya system and the Tibetan Vinaya system, the visualization for receiving the precept body is quite different. Yeah, it's really quite different. So I'm not sure what the sources of these are. How do they compare? In the Tibetan tradition, you imagine the Buddha in front, surrounded all by all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and you imagine it as light. When you took the, the 5 lay precepts, that's the visualization you do. So it's light coming from the Buddha that you imagine filling your whole body and mind. Okay. In the Chinese tradition, it's much more elaborate. I found it a bit confusing because there's energy that goes into the earth and comes out of the earth and then swirls around and goes into you and then goes back into the earth. So yeah, so I'd be interested in, like, what are the sources of these visualizations? Yeah, do you have any idea at all?
I don't know the sources, but my personal experience, the feeling of receiving the precept body or the visualization of the blessing of Buddha is quite similar experience. Mm-hmm. That's something holy power coming to you to protect you, to guide you, to lead you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they both have the same purpose. Yeah, whatever the visualization. Yeah. And, when you take the precepts, you feel it. If you're really focusing your mind well at the time of taking the precepts, you feel that. Okay? Don't ask me how or which sense it is or what color it is. But you feel something. Okay. So now we're in the section talking about consciousnesses. So the bigger thing that we were examining here was first the selfless, which was divided into the existent and the non-existent. The existent was divided into impermanent and permanent, or functioning things and permanent things. And then functioning things were divided into 3: form, or matter, consciousness, and then the third one that can be translated as non-associated compositional factors, if you like saying a lot of syllables and not knowing what they mean. Or as another term for the third one is abstract composites, which gives you more information but still isn't so clear. Okay, but now we're on the second one, consciousnesses. Okay? So after matter, the second of the 3 types of functioning things are consciousness. All Buddhists hold that consciousness exists as a separate entity from the body. This is a clear assertion of dualism that is not at all frequent in current Western philosophy, although it can be found. What is frequent in current Western philosophy and in science is the physicalist view that consciousness arises as an effect of having bodies, having bodies such as we do, and that when the body is no longer viable, consciousness dissolves and ceases. Or what they often say is consciousness is an emergent property of the body, although I'm not quite sure what emergent property means. But it's definitely physicalist. It's somehow the consciousness comes from the body. Okay. The Buddhists hold that our consciousnesses survive this life and that the continuum of our consciousnesses moves on as a repository of our karmic seeds. Of course, they do not hold that consciousness is a permanent and unchanging aspect of personality, since consciousness is included here in the division of functioning things into 3 types. So this is important, when we talk about the continuity of consciousness and that a subtle mental consciousness can act as the basis for carrying karma, that to really see that subtle mental consciousness is not a person and it's not some truly existent thing that is permanent. It's the mental consciousness in general, the general mental consciousness is eternal, okay? But the mental consciousness, the aggregates, the four mental aggregates of a particular life, those four mental aggregates cease when that life ceases. Yeah, although the general mental consciousness continues on. But it's not permanent. Yeah, it's not a personality. It's not a soul. It's not a person. And there's absolutely nothing me about our mental consciousness. Sit and think about that for a while. Because don't you feel like your mind is you? I mean, my mind is the repository of all my memories, okay? And my memories, are who I am. This is the way that the stupid mind thinks, I am who I am because I have certain memories. When you really think about that, it's pretty ridiculous. Yeah. What is me about a memory? I was the star of the show. But who was the I that was the star of the show? Yeah, that's all made up too. But we feel, my consciousness, it's my memories, it's my emotions. What I feel so intensely. Yeah, it's my who I am as a person. It's what thinks, it's what decides, it's my wisdom, it's my true self. Don't ask me what that one means either. But a lot of people use the term, don't they? We use a lot of words. We have no idea what they refer to. Okay? And they're very popular. Some of these words, the more you use them, the more you can make money. Really, come here and discover your true self. Yeah, it sounds good, doesn't it? Oh, what's your true self? What in the world does that mean? Or I am my memories. Well, I remember things from this life, but does that mean my memories of all the gazillion things I've done since beginningless time, which are probably going to be the same as your memories, because we've all been there, done that at some time during beginningless time. Anyway, it sounds cool, and if you sound cool, you can make a lot of money. Yeah, but what is money? It's pieces of paper. Rather, they hold, meaning the Buddhists hold, the consciousness of every type is impermanent and changing. Yeah, but the continuum of consciousness goes on throughout time, changing moment by moment, but remaining of the same type. So the continuum of consciousness is eternal, but that doesn't mean that the consciousness is the person or that it's some permanent soul. This is like the scientific principle of the conservation of mass that states that the measure of mass inside a closed system will always remain constant. Though the mass might change, the measure will remain constant. So somehow that is used as an analogy to show how the mental continuum goes on. I don't know. This stuff makes understanding emptiness seem easy, I don't know. Of course, in a meditative tradition that puts forth a theory of epistemology, the topic of consciousness is of essential importance. In the collected topic system of Buddhist reasoning and debate, Consciousnesses are introduced briefly in the early material and then taken up in more detail in the book-length section called Awareness or Knowledge, and that's the low rig that we've studied. The fourth major section in the collected topics and part of the greater path of reasoning. In those texts, the three, awareness, knowers, and consciousnesses, are understood as mutually inclusive. Whatever is one is also both of the others. Okay, now the next thing is important. A consciousness is defined as that which is clear and knowing. Okay, so this is something you've got to remember. Yeah, what is consciousness? That which is clear and knowing. Okay, now he's going to go into what clear and knowing mean, because there's different interpretations. But this is very important, because if we're talking to either Buddhists or non-Buddhists, we're talking about the mind and the mind and the mind, and they're going to say, what is the mind? And you go, an emergent property of the body. Yeah, or I don't know. Okay, so it's also important here to say that the word that is translated as mind can also be translated as heart. So somebody has a good heart. Yeah, same kind of idea. Which is, so the word mind is not an excellent translation for what is being spoken of here. Because mind we so easily confuse with the brain, and mind we think of intellect, okay? But here, mind is that which is clear and knowing. So it includes feeling in the sense of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings. It includes emotions. It includes cognitions and perceptions. It includes thoughts. So what is included in consciousness is really very, very broad. So if you think of it that way, when you say somebody has a kind heart and somebody has a good mind, it sounds like very, very different, okay? But that heart and that mind are both clear and knowing. They're both the same thing. Okay? So when you hear mind, don't think of the brain, don't think of the intellect. It's the whole experiential part of a person. Okay? So your mind is not in here. Yeah, it's not in here. Many scholars interpret this definition as referring to the nature and function of consciousness in the way that that which is hot and burning refers to the nature and function of water. Fire. What is it for water? Wet and moistening. Okay. So hot is the nature, burning is the function. Wet is the nature, moistening is the function. Okay? In this understanding of the definition of consciousness, the quality of being clear refers to the nature or entity of a consciousness, and the specification of knowing refers to the function of consciousness. Okay. I'm not convinced of that one. Okay. Nevertheless, there are varying interpretations of the definition's meaning. I wonder why he has quotation marks before nevertheless. Anyway, sorry, my editing mind. Some say that clear refers to the objects appearing clearly from its own side to the appearance factor of the mind, and knowing refers to the subject, the awareness apprehending or knowing the mind. That one doesn't get to me either, because the definition of mind is clear and knowing. So why would clear apply to the object? Yeah?
Answering that question, but this is a quote from Mind and in Tibetan Buddhism, Lati Rinpoche's book.
Oh, okay. It's a quote from another text. Okay. There are others who say that clear and knowing both refer to the subject's perceiving the object, and thus the definition means that which illuminates and knows. And that's what my understanding of it. That clear means that the consciousness can reflect, or here they have illuminate the object, it reflects the object, and it can know the object, can perceive it. Okay? Now, the degree to which it, whether it reflects the object clearly, whether it knows the object correctly, that's something else. Yeah.
When we talk about the 5 aggregates, then one of the aggregates is consciousness, right?
Yeah.
And but now talking about consciousness here or about mind, we're talking about all the mental aggregates together.
Yeah.
Anything that is consciousness.
Yeah.
So that is.
Yeah. And that's why he
confusing,
later,
right?
when he later says there's 2 divisions of consciousness, mental consciousness and sense consciousness. But I don't think that's completely correct. Yeah. Because that which is clear and knowing refers to all 4 mental aggregates.
And it also refers to all the functions of mind, like the other aggregates as well, like feeling and discrimination.
Yeah, that's why I said the 4 mental aggregates.
So that's why, okay. Because I get confused. That's why I thought that mind refers to consciousness and feeling and discrimination and so forth.
Yeah.
And consciousness refers to just one of the
Well, it's very confusing because the words are often used interchangeably. And when you talk about the 5 aggregates, the last one, we usually say consciousness, but it's actually the primary consciousnesses. Yeah. And they say, the 4 mental aggregates are divisions of mind, isn't it? Yeah. So mind, and then you have the 4 mental aggregates that are, we went through this before.
So as he's described, consciousness, knower, and awareness are all synonymous. That's like the largest category. Then you have main minds or minds and mental factors.
Yeah.
2 divisions.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's not how he divides it in this text.
Well, isn't it coming later on? Even sense consciousness as a mental consciousness can be further divided into main mental consciousnesses and mental factors in the retinue of a mental consciousness. So
yeah, they can be, but usually in the way this is done, when the 3 types of functioning things, then the one that is mind is divided into primary minds and mental factors. Yeah. That's the usual way, and he divides it in a different way here. So. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you say, you can talk about a sense consciousness, and it has in its retinue many mental factors. Yeah. But this is what's difficult about the words, because we say consciousness, and are we talking about the primary consciousness? Are we talking about consciousness in general? The words sometimes are used in different ways in different situations. I mean, like the word rigpa, awareness, so many different ways that word is used.
I've just wanted to say that I've noticed the word mind is used in so many different ways. And
Yes.
I just wonder if saying my mind kind of misleads us. Because first of all, it's not ours. And second, it's not this singular entity. So I've wondered, saying that over and over again to ourselves, is that kind of misleading?
Well, often we use the singular term for things that, if you're looking at the whole thing, like you say the ocean, or the forest, but actually they're made up of so many different parts. So we say the mind in one sense, meaning all of the different things that are clear and knowing. Then in another context, we might use mind as referring to a specific type of consciousness. So this is the confusion of words. That words are used in many different kinds of ways by different people, and they have different meanings at different times. Because we say clear and knowing. Okay, I usually use clear and cognizant. What does knowing mean? Because he goes on later to say here that not all consciousnesses know their object. But what does knowing mean? If they're consciousnesses, they're clear and knowing. So if you can figure out and make a dictionary of every single way in which the word is used and what it means in all those ways, great. Okay. In his presentation of types of awareness, Losang Gyatso, who was the principal of the dialectic school, concludes that in the system of the sutra school following reasoning, the meaning of a knower is that which has the activity of discriminating what are and what are not the qualities of just its own object, or that which has the activity of holding or apprehending by an awareness. Now, again, words are difficult. A knower which has the activity of discriminating. Discriminating is one mental factor. Discrimination is one mental factor. So you can't say that a knower is just that mental factor. And what exactly does discriminating mean? Because you can perceive something without discriminating what are and, what exactly it is. I think here when he says discriminating what are and what are not the qualities of just its own object, I think here it means just in a very, very gross level, it can tell yellow from purple. That level of discrimination. It doesn't mean anything more like it can, discriminate this subtle thing and that subtle thing. It just somehow can tell one object. It can differentiate one object from another. Okay. And what are and are not the qualities of just its own object, so discriminates that, or that which has the activity of holding or apprehending by an awareness. Now here, how can you say, consciousness is synonymous with awareness, and then say consciousness is that which has the activity of apprehending by an awareness? Well, as it's being said here, you know, if you say that consciousness is synonymous with awareness, then here, when he's trying to talk about the meaning of consciousness, okay, that which has the activity of holding or apprehending by an awareness. Why wouldn't you just say that which has the activity of holding or apprehending? Why do you need to put another agent in there when you're defining one agent? Or maybe I'm not reading the sentence correctly. Anyway, you're getting it as I'm reading it with all of my questions incorporated. Are you seeing what my puzzle is? Yeah, if anybody has ideas, please. Yeah. No, but it's holding or apprehending by an awareness. But that's saying that's what consciousness is. And consciousness is synonymous with awareness.
So an hand can hold or can apprehend an object, but a mind holds or apprehends an object by its awareness, not by.
Oh, you think that's what it's meaning? Possibly. Possibly. Yeah. Oops. Okay. He is taking knower and by extension awareness and consciousness, since they are mutually inclusive with knower, in the broadest possible sense as that which discriminates or apprehends. Now there it's okay, that which discriminates or apprehends. But again, discrimination is the function of one particular mental factor, not of all of consciousness. Apprehend, yes, is the function of consciousness.
Right? Wouldn't the word cognizes be easier, because both of those other words have some connotations with them?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Where cognizes is more, doesn't have it, it's not pigeonholed into certain types of minds as much, I don't think.
Well, it would be the same thing as it would mean apprehend.
But it doesn't, like apprehend sometimes can be referring to a certain way that you engage with an object, like apprehended object, right? Is a certain, and then same thing with indiscrimination has the problem with being a mental factor, whereas cognize isn't used in those ways.
Yeah. So each translator has their own favorite way. And I mean, this is the trick of translating, isn't it? To find an English word that kind of suits what you're trying to talk about. Yeah. Do you have something? Yeah.
Apprehending and cognizing, these are really different words in Tibetan, and they really have different meaning. Zimpa and of Sheba, of there can be many different words for cognizing or knowing and so on, also in English. But apprehending is different. It's really the grasping of the object. So it's a different.
No, it's the same. The same Tibetan word can be translated as apprehend and as grasp.
Yeah.
And apprehend and grasp have two very different meanings. So that same word zinpa in Tibetan can have, one can be self-grasping and one can just be apprehending yellow.
But the meaning, the root meaning of that word, apprehending is just for us more convenient, and that's somehow what you do. You apprehend, you sort of grasp it with your mind. But the root meaning of zinpa is really to hold on something.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be knowing, at least, definitely.
Yep. Well, this gets into a whole discussion, because grasping is usually something we want to abandon. Apprehending is not something to abandon.
Yeah, in Tibetan, the word is the same.
Yeah. But, I mean, this is the whole problem with words. okay, and translation. And you can have one word that can have very different meanings in different contexts. Yeah, and that's the trick, to figure out what in the world a word means in a different context. Yeah, like the word sanction. That word always puzzles me. Sometimes sanction can mean to approve of something, and sometimes sanction means to disapprove. It's a very puzzling word for me. Yeah. So there's, yeah. Now we see why, when we talk about veiled truths being connected with language and conception, this gives us some reason why they're veiled. Because, the language and the conception are just approximating and creating the object at the same time. Okay. Of course, now here he says, of course, a consciousness does not necessarily know its object. But he just got done saying consciousness and knower are mutually inclusive. Of course, a consciousness does not necessarily know its object, or there would be no need for epistemology. Anybody understand that? Epistemology is how you know an object. So there's different ways of apprehending or understanding the object.
I don't know what brought to mind to me is like the idea of like there's kind of ways to shoot all these down, like the one where you what is it, aware but not ascertained? Was that where you don't ascertain an object? Yeah, so you have an awareness there, but you haven't ascertained it. So you have to have a way to explain that. So you have to have epistemology. If it knew its object, you wouldn't have to explain that.
Yeah. Yeah, but how does an inattentive awareness even discriminate its object? Okay. Okay, here he says, rather, consciousness has the function of discriminating, holding, or apprehending an object by means of an awareness. It approaches or engages this object. Okay. Still, a consciousness does have the activity of knowing. Now, my editor would not let me write something like this. Yeah. The most basic division of consciousness is into two types, mental consciousnesses and sense consciousnesses. And that's not the standard way. Let me just read the next paragraph. There is no overlap between mental consciousnesses and sense consciousnesses. Though they obviously coordinate with each other and support each other, there is no consciousness that is both a mental consciousness and a sense consciousness. And all types of consciousnesses are either one or the other. Similarly, there's no consciousness that is both a visual consciousness and an auditory consciousness. This is all talking in the context of ordinary beings. For Buddhas, all the consciousnesses are cross-functional. Yeah.
Question online.
Mm-hmm.
Someone said, is secondary mind the same term as mental factors? For example, when emotions take over, devoid of logic, they call that a secondary mind?
Yeah, that sounds like it's speaking about mental factors. But the term is usually mental factors, not secondary minds. Maybe the person's thinking because there's primary consciousnesses, then there's secondary ones. Maybe that's it. Yeah.
am reading this book, I always am thinking of who his audience is. And to me, it seems like he's just teaching a bunch of college students, and he doesn't want to get into mental factors yet. He's trying to get them up and debating. So he's going to pick something that they understand. That's how I always think about some of his presentations.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay, shall we go on to mental consciousness? The definition of a mental consciousness is a knower that is produced in dependence on its own uncommon, empowering condition, a mental sense power. Yeah, sounds fine. We'll keep reading. Mental and sense consciousnesses are divided in terms of their special bases of dependence, their uncommon, meaning unique or unshared causes. The uncommon empowering condition of a sense consciousness is its own internal sense power. The I sense power is the uncommon empowering condition for the I consciousness and is just the same for the other four sense powers and their respective consciousnesses. Okay, I think people know that. The uncommon empowering condition of a mental consciousness is the mental sense power, which is any of the 6 consciousnesses in the immediately preceding moment. Okay, so it's not some kind of internal form. Yeah, it's a preceding of moment of any of the 6 consciousnesses, the 5 sense consciousnesses, or a preceding moment of the mental consciousness. Okay, so that's the uncommon empowering condition of a mental consciousness. Thus, the I consciousness of the last moment can serve as the mental sense power and uncommon empowering condition of a mental consciousness of the present moment. We have these experiences all the time when the I prompts a mental consciousness. Okay? So I see the color green, and then I start thinking, oh, this green has sparkles in it, and I really like it, or whatever, okay? So there was a visual consciousness of the green, and that acted as the uncommon empowering condition of the mental consciousness knowing green, okay? Or I start visualizing green or thinking about green and, whatever it is. Okay. Moreover, as the substantial cause of the I consciousness of the present moment, the I consciousness of the last moment is also an empowering condition of the present I consciousness, although not an uncommon empowering condition. Okay, so here we're going back to I consciousnesses, okay? And the substantial cause of the I consciousness of the previous moment, in other words, what transformed into the present I consciousness, visual consciousness, was the I consciousness of the last moment, okay, the previous one, okay? That was one moment of I consciousness producing the next moment of I consciousness as a substantial cause. Then he's also saying here that I consciousness of the previous moment is also an empowering condition of the present I consciousness, although not an uncommon empowering condition. Yeah, but here he's talking about I consciousnesses. Yeah, so the previous sentence was about mental consciousness.
It's not uncommon because it's common also. It can be a empowering
condition for mental consciousness, yeah. Similarly, the I sense power is an uncommon empowering condition of an I consciousness. And if that I consciousness induces a mental consciousness, the I sense power is also an empowering condition of that mental consciousness, although not an uncommon one, because the mental consciousness can be prompted by any of the senses. Now, there, saying that I sense power is a empowering condition of the mental consciousness means that to be an empowering condition, it doesn't need to exist in the immediately preceding moment. Because that I sense power existed in moment one. Moment two, you have the visual consciousness. Moment three, you have the mental consciousness. And he's saying, here's your mental consciousness. That visual consciousness is the uncommon empowering condition of the mental consciousness. And then he's saying, 2 moments back, that your I sense power, is an empowering condition of the mental consciousness, but not an uncommon or unique one. But it's interesting because it's 2 moments back. And usually when we talk about causes and conditions, we're talking usually about something in the preceding moment, though not always. So this could be an example of when it isn't in the preceding moment. Yeah. Okay, so the point is here when he's talking about empowering conditions, to be aware of the difference between an empowering condition and an uncommon empowering condition. Okay. Only mental consciousnesses are produced in dependence on an uncommon empowering condition, that is a mental sense power. Yeah, because an I consciousness may have as its substantial cause a preceding moment of I consciousness, but that's not its uncommon empowering condition. It's its substantial cause, and according to him, also an empowering condition, but not the uncommon one. Are people getting this? No? Okay, let me just finish this paragraph and then. Only mental consciousnesses are produced in dependence on an uncommon empowering condition that is a mental sense power. And this is identified not as subtle matter, but as a former moment of consciousness. Okay? Yeah. It's, right. Well, but also not only in time, but, okay, let's go back and read this all again. Okay. Moreover, as the substantial cause of the I consciousness of the present moment, okay, so the I consciousness perceiving green of the present moment, the I consciousness of the last moment, when you were receiving purple, is also an empowering condition of the present I consciousness perceiving green, although not an uncommon empowering condition, because it's your I faculty that's the uncommon empowering condition. Okay? So he's just basically saying, that it's some kind of cause or condition of this one. Similarly, an I sense power, wake up. An I sense power is an uncommon empowering condition of an I consciousness, and if that I consciousness induces a mental consciousness, the I sense power is also an empowering condition of that mental consciousness, although not an uncommon one, because the mental consciousness can be prompted by any of the senses. But the uncommon empowering condition of a mental consciousness is any of the preceding consciousnesses. You all look vastly interested in this topic. I can sense the enthusiasm in this room. Yeah, it rivals the enthusiasm of when we were talking about sound. Remember that? Yes.
The sentence that's giving me trouble is the uncommon empowering condition of a mental consciousness is the mental sense power, which is any of the 6 consciousnesses in the immediately preceding moment. So it's saying the mental sense power is a consciousness?
Yes.
Whereas previously the sense powers referred to forms.
Yeah, but
So
the mental consciousness is unique, and it's unique, its uncommon empowering condition is not an internal form. It's a previous moment of consciousness. So it's the only kind of consciousness that has a consciousness as its uncommon empowering condition. Mm-hmm. All the sense consciousnesses have the physical sense faculty.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, the term mental sense power, it's like confusing.
Yeah. Yeah, mental sense power, because we usually think mental and sense are different, yeah. So sometimes we talk about the 6 senses, then the mental is called a sense, but we're usually, which makes sense in that way. But usually, when we think of sense, we usually think of the 5 senses. Yeah, because does Western science even talk about a 6th? It talks about 5 senses, doesn't it? Only 5. Huh? Does it talk about a mental consciousness?
No, but they include 7, proprioception and kinesthesia. So some textbooks say 7 senses, but they don't include the mind as a sense, which is weird.
Yeah. I mean, do they say that thought is part of a mental consciousness?
I don't think so. Proprioception and kinesthesia.
What's that?
Yes, it's bodily sensing and awareness of, like the heart rate, for example, sensing your heart rate and feeling, yes, spatiotemporal location.
Yeah.
Sensing your body on a chair.
And so what about that?
Yes, it's basically.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
I
what
see.
it is, subcategorization.
I see, okay, for tactile.
I have my fingers in the place where I got it. It says above, the uncommon empowering condition of a mental consciousness is the mental sense power.
Yes.
That's the uncommon one.
Right.
So down here in the subject in question, or the sentence in question, where it says the I consciousness induces the mental consciousness, but it's not an uncommon one, because it's not a mental consciousness.
No, it says the I sense power.
Yeah. The I sense power is also an empowering condition of the mental consciousness, but it is not an uncommon one.
Right.
Right.
Right. So because it's the common one of the visual consciousness.
But also because the uncommon one for the mental consciousness
is a consciousness.
Mental consciousness.
Right.
Right.
Right. But my comment was that you're talking about this mental consciousness, thinking about green in this moment. Its uncommon empowering condition was the visual consciousness that saw green sometime before. It doesn't even have to be the immediate moment preceding it. And then that faculty that enabled your visual consciousness to see green is also an empowering condition, but it's even time-wise further back in the chain. Yeah. So that's all. Okay. Yeah. But what's interesting here with the mental consciousness is the uncommon empowering condition doesn't have to be something that existed in the immediately preceding moment. Yeah, because you can see green today and think about green tomorrow. Yeah, whereas in a sense consciousness, your uncommon empowering condition is it's in the right before that visual consciousness. Huh? Yeah, right. But what I'm getting at is you saw green yesterday, yeah, then that visual consciousness, yeah, is the uncommon empowering condition of thinking about green today.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that because when you think about green today, the green that you saw yesterday, then the uncommon, I would say that the uncommon condition of thinking about green is a preceding moment of consciousness, and that might be a memory, but that would be the uncommon condition of thinking of green.
So you're saying that if I'm thinking about green today, the uncommon empowering condition of green could be my having a sense consciousness in the immediate preceding moment that was hearing a loud noise. That doesn't make sense.
No. The uncommon condition would be a preceding mental consciousness thinking of green, remembering green.
But that memory of green is a mental consciousness.
Right.
So what is its uncommon empowering condition?
Another mental consciousness, a trigger?
No, it's the eye consciousness seeing green. Otherwise, how are you going to have a memory of green if you didn't have an eye consciousness seeing green?
Well, that would be the common.
No, that would be uncommon.
I think
No, but he's saying the eye sense power is an uncommon empowering condition. The eye consciousness.
for the eye consciousness,
Okay.
but for the mental consciousness, it's the common empowering condition.
Yes, right.
But I think he's only talking about the sequence here. I don't think he's talking about today and tomorrow. I don't know that we could extrapolate that to
No, but
memory.
if we're talking about real life experience, if I'm remembering the green I saw yesterday, yeah, the uncommon empowering condition of me thinking about green today has got to be seeing the green yesterday, that visual consciousness. Because otherwise, why would I remember thinking about green today if I didn't, and I'm thinking about that specific green, not just any green?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that situation. But I think here he's just describing a sequence of three consciousnesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, or three empowering conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
three empowering conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's stop here. We're one paragraph short of sense consciousnesses.
Off the topic a little bit. But when you started this topic, you brought up that we start with dividing the selfless into existence and non-existence.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if aren't there other viewpoints about how to go about that? And isn't selfless sometimes not divided?
Yeah.
Because I remember years ago when you had me start reading the selfless chapter of Meditation on Emptiness, and you didn't agree with the way that was presented there.
No, it's the same way as
Yeah,
here.
it's the same as here. But is there another school of thought about all that?
I don't know. There
Okay.
might be.
Okay.
Yeah, there's always different opinions.
Okay.
Yeah, because some people might say, how can the non-existent don't exist, so how could you why include it in your taxonomy to start with? So we're going to dedicate our merit. What category does merit go in? Abstract composites, okay. So the consciousness that is dedicating merit. Yeah, the consciousness is dedicating merit. What is its uncommon empowering condition? You think it's just the previous moment of mental consciousness? You know, I don't think so. Yeah, I would think it would be conceptual consciousness that understand what merit is. Now, how do you understand merit? You know, you hear words. Build a building and then you understand what merit is? Okay. Yeah.
Before that, it's just a hypothesis.
Okay, yeah, I guess Milarepa was in that business too. Yeah. So you have a good predecessor. Okay, shall we dedicate? But think about this a little bit, you know, and you're going through the day. What are the causes of your various consciousnesses? Okay, so I was thinking a bit about the part from last night's teaching and thought to try and explain it again and see if we can make better sense out of it. Okay, so to review, you know, any cognition has three conditions. Okay, the objective condition, which is the object you're perceiving, the uncommon empowering condition, which is the thing that links the object so that it produces a consciousness perceiving that object, and then the resultant consciousness itself. So the first two happen prior to the, I'm sorry. Those are the third cause. Okay, we had the object, the empowering condition. Okay, then we have the immediate preceding condition, and that is the moment directly before the resultant cognizer. Okay, and it can be any of the any of the minds. Okay, in the case when you're producing a visual consciousness, it could be a prior moment of a visual consciousness, but it could be any other consciousness too, because you could be waking up in the morning and you open your eyes, and so it has to be a consciousness just the immediately preceding moment. Okay, so we have those three conditions. Yeah. All three of the conditions are causes for the consciousness, so they all occur before the consciousness. The immediately preceding one has to occur in the moment directly before that consciousness. Okay? In the sense, when we're talking about sense cognizers, the other two also occur just right before that consciousness. Okay? So it's like, here's the white of the cup. Yeah, we have these, the eye faculty, which is the shape of something I can't remember. Oh yeah, a zamar flower. Yeah, and then the immediately preceding mind, which I could be looking over here and seeing the green of the exit sign, and that could be the immediately preceding mind, and then I turn here, okay? And then we have that visual consciousness perceiving white, okay? So that's pretty easy for the sense consciousness. Now, for mental consciousness, okay? Mental consciousness, the immediately preceding condition is still got to be the mind, mind directly prior to that. And it's probably, I would think, usually a mental consciousness, because the mental consciousness is pretty stable and it's always one moment after the next. Okay. Then the object condition is, let's say, I'm going to have a mental consciousness remembering the white that I saw a few minutes ago. Okay. So the white would be the object. Yeah. Then the uncommon empowering condition, is going to be that visual consciousness that saw the white a few minutes ago. Okay? Because that's the consciousness that's going to, the unique empowering condition. Or they say he's translating it as uncommon empowering condition. That's going to cause that consciousness remembering white. Okay? So that's the uncommon empowering condition. Then, looking at that more closely, since that uncommon empowering condition, which was the eye consciousness seeing white that happened a few minutes ago, its uncommon empowering condition was the eye faculty. Okay? So the eye faculty is not an uncommon empowering condition for the mental consciousness remembering the white. You see, it's not an uncommon one because that is the visual consciousness that saw white before that is the uncommon one. But it said that one is an empowering condition without the uncommon attached to it because it helped to make the visual consciousness perceiving white. Okay? Yeah. So are you with me so far? Okay. An example. Okay. Okay. So I'm look at the black of this. Okay. Yeah. Now look around the room. So when you look at the black of this, the object is black. Yeah. The uncommon empowering condition is the eye faculty in your eyes, and the immediately preceding condition is whatever mind you had prior to seeing this. Okay. Now, look around the room, see all these other things, think about a few things, what you did, what you have to do, blah, blah, blah. And then close your eyes and remember what that black looked like. Okay? Now, the immediately preceding condition for that black, for your memory of the black, is, whatever you were looking at or thinking about, probably what in your mental consciousness, the preceding moment. Okay. The object is still black, the black color. Okay. Now, the uncommon empowering condition that makes you able to have that memory of black is your visual consciousness that saw the black. Okay, that's the uncommon empowering condition. Okay, now if we want to go a little further, the eye consciousness, the eye faculty that helped you to see the black with your visual consciousness to start with, it has some role in this process, but it's not the uncommon empowering condition. Okay? It's an empowering condition. Yeah? Because without it, you wouldn't have been able to, remember black. Okay? But it's not the unique one. So I think that's basically what was happening last night. And then to just remember, anytime we have a mental perception, so that that, or a mental cognizer. And the Sautrantikas say that as soon as you have a direct cognizer, sense cognizer, then right after that, you have a very brief moment that you don't even notice of a mental direct perceiver of that object. I don't know if the other schools say that, but Sautrantika say it, but we're not aware of it. And then after that, then we we remember the object, we think about it. That's all conceptual consciousness. Okay? But whenever you have a mental consciousness, the uncommon empowering condition has to be another consciousness. Okay? Which means it could be one of the 5 consciousnesses that see the 5 sense objects, or it could be a preceding mental consciousness. Okay? Because you're thinking about the black now, yeah. Then you look away. Then you close your eyes. You think about the black again. Okay, so it's like that. Or you remember the sound of my voice, or you remember the sound of the aircon or something. In that case, then it's the uncommon condition would be your auditory consciousness that heard that sound.
I can see how you use your visual consciousness to see that black.
Right.
But when you're thinking about it later, that visual consciousness is not existent. It's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're having a memory of it.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
You're not perceiving. When you have the mental consciousness, a remembering consciousness is not a direct perceiver.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you gave the example of then seeing the black, you said, and you have that visual consciousness, but that visual consciousness isn't existent anymore.
Yeah, but that consciousness,
it'd have to be like a memory of it.
Because it did exist.
Right.
Yeah. Acts still as the unique empowering condition. So it looks like the unique empowering condition and the objective condition for mental consciousnesses don't need to exist in the moment before the mental consciousness does. Okay? Mm-hmm. Because if I remember something that happened 5 years ago, that,
so you're remembering that visual consciousness.
Yeah, it's the visual consciousness that's the uncommon empowering condition, allowing me to remember that object. Like if I think about the Abbey, what it looked like 15 years ago, when you could walk from Ananda Hall to the barn in a place that now there's no way you could walk there because the trees have grown in to fill the space. So if I remember that, that is depending on a visual consciousness that happened many years ago. And the object I'm remembering has also happened many years ago and isn't present right now. Yeah, but by the force of my having perceived that with a visual consciousness before, now I can remember what that looked like.
So what is the significance of uncommon? Like, why does it matter that we are identifying uncommon?
Oh, because uncommon is just saying that consciousness needs to be produced by that particular empowering condition, that absent that one, that consciousness isn't going to be produced. Okay? So if I want to see something, I must have the eye faculty. Absent the eye faculty, I'm not going to have any visual consciousnesses. And I may have the ear faculty, but that can't produce a visual consciousness, nor can my tactile faculty. Okay? So that eye faculty is the unique one that can produce the visual consciousness.
Yesterday, after the teachings, I remembered a case where a person who was blind his whole life, 68 years, then he had an accident, and where he fall, and then the doctor said to him, hey, his blindness is curable. So he had the surgery, and then he could see. And then they described that he had to learn to see colors and shapes and such, and that lots of it was going through his memory. So I tried to apply what we learned to that situation.
Yeah.
You know, somebody
Well,
was never seen before.
I think what's happening is, you know, he's learning. He has to learn to discriminate the colors. He's still getting the sense data, but he doesn't know how to discriminate the colors. He has to relearn that.
Yeah, I was still trying to get my head around this.
You have to pretend it has chocolate on it, and that you want to hold it close to your
I will
mouth.
eat it then. That won't be very good. Anyway, this eye consciousness, you know, and you're remembering something.
Uh-huh.
For example, if I remember something that happened to me when I was 3 or 4 years old, I have the visual memory that I could have of the playground then is probably very much not close to reality at all. It's a fantasy, right?
Yeah.
But it would still be the uncommon cause would still be the visual consciousness of that moment when I was 3 years old and I saw my playground.
Well, unless it's of the previous, the memory you had right after the incident when you were 3 years old. Because you had the visual consciousness when you were 3. And then, like you said, you had a mental consciousness. You may have thought about what happened to you or what you saw when you were 3 years old the day after. So that would be a mental consciousness. Perhaps that mental consciousness would be the one that is the uncommon, empowering condition for today when you think about that.
But then the common empowering condition would still be the visual consciousness seeing this real life.
That would still be an
playground.
Empowering condition, but not the uncommon one.
So then in terms of when I have a fantasy object, for example, I imagine, which I can, a rabbit with horns, you know.
You imagine what?
A rabbit with horns.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because I could imagine, I have never seen a rabbit with horns, of course, but I have seen a rabbit and I've seen horns.
Yeah.
So these two are fed with my visual consciousness.
Yeah.
So is me thinking about a rabbit with horns, which I can do, and I can have a visual memory of a rabbit with horns, a visual image in my mind.
Yeah.
Is that is then the common empowerment or common empowering condition seeing both a rabbit and horns?
It would seem so. That's what it seems so. Like you would have to have the visual consciousness of seeing a rabbit or seeing horns or seeing a picture of a rabbit and a picture of horns, or even somebody maybe describing to you what a rabbit with horns would look like. That auditory consciousness, that would produce in your mind a visual image.
So then that leaves open the idea of that you would be able to imagine forms with your mental consciousness, and then, for example, reproduce them as a painter, that you would be able to imagine forms that you have never seen before.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we do that all the time. That's, when you're planning something or when you're designing something, you're imagining something that you've never seen before that is exactly like that. But you're imagining things that, you've seen before, and then, because when you form a conceptual appearance, you're taking all sorts of different things and putting them together. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, people who write music may hear it in their head or, yeah. I mean, when your architects are already, imagining what the building looks like, you know, because they're putting together things that they've seen in different situations and, you know, making a new conceptual appearance. Yeah.
Some pictures before, when we actually saw the altar, made the altar, the hollow of the Buddha, you know, there were different influences in that. She had maybe seen this kind of clothing and the shape.
Yeah, and putting lots of things together. That's the advantage of a conceptual consciousness over a sense consciousness, is that you can really, you can create new ideas and you can remember and you can do all sorts of things. Yeah, but the disadvantage is that you don't see the object directly. So, you know, in spiritual practice, we use the conceptual consciousnesses to get an idea of what we can't know directly, and then we meditate single-pointedly, you know, with wisdom and serenity to remove that conceptual appearance so we can see it directly.